welcome back to Maqam Lessons. This lesson, like the next one and the two before it, is focused on the physical muscle memory of intonation. Pardon me. So intonation is a big deal in Maqam. We're very concerned about the very specific intonations, and for those of you who are coming from Western music, the differences between intonation in Western music and Arabic music. And for this particular lesson, we're going to focus on Jins Hijaz. Now, we've already done a lesson on Jins Hijaz, which was one of the first few Maqam lessons that I recorded. I think it might be lesson number 2, because it's one of the most important ajnas. And I'm doing a specific intonation focus on this one because even though most people, when they write it, think of it as an equal tempered, here D, E flat, F sharp, G. The E flat is a little bit higher than it would be. The F sharp is a little bit lower. And I prefer to talk in terms of scale degrees. So the tonic, 1, 2. If you sing 1, 2, that 2 is a little higher than it would be if you played it on the piano. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The 3 is a little bit lower than it would be if you played it on the piano. So this is not an equal tempered jins. It's not a jins that you find exactly that you could play well on the piano or on equal tempered instruments. Although it is close. It's closer than the quote unquote quarter tone ajnas that we've been dealing with. So why am I doing this additional lesson on the intonation of Jins Hijaz when we already have a lesson on Jins Hijaz? It's because I've noticed in some of my private students the need for a more intense focus on some of these intervals. So what I'm going to do differently here is we're going to focus on a more narrow, a shorter level of melodic content. So I opened with a long melody in Hijaz, something like this. And this, which I just repeated not exactly verbatim, but I repeated it very close to how we do it, this is not a phrase that I invented. This is a long, what I might call sentence in the vocabulary of Jins Hijaz that you'll hear from other people, maybe a slightly varied, slightly ornamented differently, but this is part of my vocabulary. I'm just displaying it for you. And this is the big level of melodic vocabulary. We have these sentences that are iconic, that are expected, that typically open or close an improvisation. But I'm going to break that sentence down for you into the next lower level, which are what I would call the melody words. And we started with this. You can repeat it. And then. And I did that twice. And then I did another phrase. So this first half was 4 melody words put together. I'll play them. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So the first half of my big sentence was this phrase. You can hear how that phrase is made up of 4 melody words. And then the second half was one more melody word. It's a typical melody word within Hijaz. So these melody words, which are short melodies of 4 to 7, let's say, notes, are the basic building blocks of vocabulary of the Maqam system. And that is the subject of most of the lessons in this series, especially the lessons on ajnas. We do a few of the larger sentences, but because of where I'm aiming this content at sort of beginners and intermediate folk, a little bit of advanced folk for some of the theory stuff, but I'm aiming it for you to build that basic melodic vocabulary, because that's what really everybody needs. This vocabulary of melody words is there's probably thousands of them. I haven't counted them, we haven't put them in a dictionary, but they are the backbone of melody in Arabic music. But there's a slower level where we're really talking about even smaller segments. Just like that. Or just these really short parts, maybe 2 or 3 notes each. And there would be the equivalent to what we might say are morphemes in language. So if I say the word language, that's one word, but there's parts of it. Now, obviously, there's the phonemes, the very smallest parts of it, but there's another level up. Morpheme itself, or would be a morpheme. Theme is something that you'll hear at the end of things. So these smaller segments of words, if you're really interested, you can go look up some linguistics. I'm just getting over a cold. That's why I haven't recorded lessons for a while. Pardon the phlegm. Let's see how that goes. Okay, that's much better. Although clearing your throat like that is actually supposed to be bad for the throat. And I'm focusing on physicality because these morphemes can really help us focus on the physicality more. Our goal is to develop a really strong muscle memory for the intervals of these ajnas. And you can't do it at a lower level. In other words, it's useless to just say, okay, I'm going to practice the intonation of one note by itself, and then this note by itself, right? It's the relationship between them that is fundamentally important to what we're doing. So we're going to do the same kind of stuff that we have done in the other lessons, which is to say call and response. I'm singing, and I want you to answer me, and we're going to sing in Yaleel. But we're going to do it in much smaller chunks so we can really focus on the muscle memory. And there's a couple things that I want to do before we really start to dive in and sing. First of all, we want to focus on physicality. I want you to take a moment and take a deep breath in. And let it out. And take another breath, and I want you to imagine your breath going all the way down to your stomach. And you can feel your stomach expand as the breath goes in. And you can feel it contract as the breath goes out. And now I want you to take another breath, and I want you to be aware of your legs and your feet. It's really good if you're standing for this, but even if you're sitting down, be aware of your legs and your feet and what effect the breath has on them. And because we're going to be doing much simpler melodic content, stuff that's not very hard to remember or copy, I want you to devote more of your attention to your own physical body, to what you're feeling in the moment. Because what we're doing is we're trying to retrain muscles, especially if you have Western training. We're trying to retrain the connection between the ear and the muscles and the brain. And that involves really going deep into the body and into the mind together to try to bring them together, to try to shift how we're doing things. So again, take another deep breath and try as much as you can to keep your focus on your body as we do these exercises. And I want you to sing, if you're an instrumentalist, through this lesson the first time, and then pick up your instrument the second time. I am doing these on keys that are very common for instrumentalists, so we're going to do Hijaz on D. It's going to be very simple for you. But keep your attention. As a vocalist, we're going to do a little bit of vocal stuff to really make sure that we're using our body properly when we sing. But as an instrumentalist, I want you to pay attention to the muscles of your fingers, to the physical feeling of producing the sound, not just the sound itself or the intellectual construct. So for the vocalists out there, and for those of you who are instrumentalists who are going to do this the first time vocalists, I want to start by really engaging the diaphragm. And my favorite way to do that, to just really make it easy for everyone, is to make a laughing sound. So just make a fake laugh and feel it in your stomach. And it's ridiculous. You can make yourself actually laugh by fake laughing first. Right? It's kind of... I'm actually making myself laugh. Right? You feel that in your stomach. Even my face is getting red and heated. Right? Allow yourself to feel the physicality of the laugh. And then engage your diaphragm and go ha, ha, ha. And feel the sound being produced all the way down to your lower abdomen. Ha, ha, ha. If you're experienced, you might be able to feel it down to your perineum, the base of your pelvic floor. Ha, ha, ha. But it's very important that you feel it below the diaphragm and in the lower abdomen, below the belly button. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. And let's go to the top of the jins. Ha, ha, ha. This is the gammaz. Ha, ha, ha. 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 And let's do ha, 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 ha. Ha, 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 ha. Ha, 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 ha. The advantage of this type of hitting the note very quickly, rather than doing a sustained note, is it forces you to get the intonation of the note immediately. So if I do ha, 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 and then ha, 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 Now, typically in these lessons, I want you to listen first and repeat the second time. I'm going to repeat an arbitrary number of times. So just jump in wherever you feel comfortable. It's always good to listen a little bit first and copy second, but we're not going to do it exactly one then the other. Sometimes it will be. Ha, 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 ha. Yenin, 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 yeah, yeah, ha, 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 yeah, 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 ha, 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 ha. I'm going between the sort of the diaphragm emphasis ha sound and the smooth sound, so you practice connecting them, the two. Ah, 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 Let's make it shorter. Let's do the last part of that. I'm trying to build to this melody word. Right? This is something, we can do it. Sometimes it's hard to break them into smaller chunks and make them still retain their identity. Because we do want to keep the identity of these melody words. But sometimes when we're practicing, and whatever kind of music you've done before, if you haven't done Arabic music, you know that sometimes you have to break things into smaller chunks and put them into larger chunks. But it's actually, and this is a key point, that the identity of the melodic phrase helps us hear the intonation. That was how I learned how to shift my own sense of intonation. So we don't want to totally lose the broader rhythmic and melodic contours of the melody words, because that's how we really get that sense of intonation. So I'm going to break that into 3 kind of morphemes. And then and they overlap, right? Let's do that 5 times. For instrumentals, you notice, so this is D string, G string. I'm doing with the second finger. This is a particular melodic thing that happens in Hijaz, where we're using a sort of a quick note that's above. It's just part of the vocabulary. That's the whole thing, but we're doing You can practice it fast. And really, you can even put your hand on your stomach there. Let me kind of show you a little bit more. See how my belly's jiggling? Shout out to Brooklyn Maqam Hang, by the way. And the next phrase, and then the last part of it. And actually, let's make it even shorter so we really focus on this interval. He. See how my whole body is responding? Pardon me, from my diaphragm and below. It's also good to use different vowel sounds, because that forces you to focus on the intonation and keep other variables moving. And let's put it all together. So that's how we build from morphemes to words. Let me just, continue, give you some more examples, a little bit more exercise here. I was doing some sequences up. Good, that's a good exercise practice for you. And then going down. Different going up that time. That's a good one. And we can do the other one going up. So, right, I'm doing the same sequence using this little morpheme and sequencing it up 4 times. Feel free to stop the video, practice each one more times, especially if you notice, the more you pay attention to your body, pay attention to the specifics of the sound, you might be like, oh, okay, I'm doing good with this interval, but I'm still having trouble with this interval. It's actually really hard to sing this interval, this quote-unquote augmented second. So if you find that you have trouble more in one part of the melody than in another, then stop and repeat that part, and then come back and do the sequence. So pause the video, do whatever you need to do. I'm sort of providing this content just like one after the other, but it's really the right way to practice with this video is to take little chunks of it, focus on them until you really feel that you're not just hearing them correctly, but that you're feeling your whole body. So let's again take a deep breath. We don't have to rush. Patience is key. Because, it's a lifelong venture to understand music, to understand Maqam. And by understand, I mean to understand it in your body and your mind at the same level. Just reversing the order. Tricky. So let's break that one down. That's a popular ornament. Really focus on that diaphragm. Ha, 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 ha. Feel your stomach feel your stomach like you're punching it. Ha, 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 ha. That will really force you to have a strong control over that thing, over that thing, whatever it is. Who cares what stuff it's called? All we care about is the sound. E, 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 e. Ooh, 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 ooh. And in that particular phrase, when you're going between the bigger leap, try to get the same feeling when you do it smoothly as you do when you do it one note at a time. Ha, 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 ha. So ha, ha gives you a particular feeling. Try to get the same feeling in your stomach. Ha, 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 ha. This is a workout. This is physical. Maqam is physical. It's a physical skill. It's not as easy for me as the previous is easy. I feel myself. I need to practice that a little bit. Easier on the fingers than in the voice. And I feel like I want to break it down. And add the first part. Let's move to the next one. Also tricky. Because that's hard. Let's just do the first part of that. And let's add one more note to it. ah, ah, ooh, ooh, ha 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 ha, ah ha 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 ha, hee 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 hee, hee 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 hee, ha 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 ha. You got to make up exercises for yourself like this. That's what my teacher Alfred taught me. You take little chunks, you just repeat them until you get bored of them, until you get sick of them, until you embody them. He didn't speak much about the embodied part, but I know that's what he was getting at. Ha 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 ha, ooh, ooh, ah, ah, ah. Oop, see? I can't do one after the other, so let me practice the two next to each other. So we're practicing ah, ah. That's very tricky. Ooh, 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 ooh. E, 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 ah, 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 ah. Smooth but not very clean. Ha 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 ha. And okay, so you see that I'm using my instrument to imitate my voice. So whatever instrument you're on, if you're on violin or oud or whatever, practice different forms of articulation. You don't have to exactly copy what I'm doing, but just like I'm using different vowel sounds, use different forms of articulation. If you're in the nai, quick breaths versus long breaths. To practice these exercises, the more you force yourself to do it in these different ways, the more flexibility and the more control you have over the intonation. Well, okay. So let's wrap. So the last section, we want to practice this one. Those are the four, and reverse order. We could practice sort of a different kind, different style. Also popular. E, 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 oh, 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 oh. Sort of descending triplets is another popular ornament. Oh, so we'll do them one at a time. Oh, 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 oh. added ornament. Oh, 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 oh. It's a good melody word. Oh, very popular Hijaz melody word. Oh, so let's just break that down a little bit. Oh, oh, he, he. Ah, 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 we have the opening melody of Tahmil Suznak. We'll get to that in a few more lessons. Suznak, which starts with Hijaz on the 5th of Rust. So the melody is... Anyway. Okay, so first of all, thank you to all my Patreon supporters. If you've enjoyed this lesson and you feel like it benefits you, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Patreon enables me, because of the people who are supporting me there, it enables me to make these lessons available for free on YouTube for those of you who can't afford it. So you, if you can afford $6, $10 a month, and you feel like you're going to use these lessons a lot, your support of me will help support everyone else who can't afford it but would still like to learn Maqam. So I really appreciate that, and you can find the link for Patreon below. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Links are also in the description. And a shout out again to Brooklyn Maqam Hang, great organization here in New York City that promotes jams and concerts and events around Arabic music in New York City. Been around since 2018. Look out for some great concerts coming up. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram. I think I'm going to put a thing down there. So I've given you a lot of content to work on. Again, the key, stop the video wherever you need to. Take little chunks, repeat as we've done. And I haven't given you all the melodic content of Jins Hijaz broken down in like this. That would be like 7 hours. But you can take the other videos that I did for Jins Hijaz and for Maqam Hijaz. There's 2 videos already for Maqam Hijaz. This is Maqam Hijaz simple version and Maqam Hijaz a more complex version. And you can take those melodies and stop them and take the same approach, little bit by bit, and then zoom out to the bigger melodies, and then zoom out again to the larger sentences. Eventually, I may make a series of lessons that are focused on really the larger scale sentences for more advanced players. Some of them are already in these lessons, but that may be a ways away. Folks, once you've really absorbed this vocabulary of words, you can usually start to pick those up on your own through listening to improvisations and songs. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I'm about to record the next one, which is going to be same approach for Jins Sika. So thanks for watching.